The gaze that closes itself to the good of another, closes itself to its own light. There is a shadow that nests in the soul, a peculiar darkness that does not seek what it lacks, but is wounded by what the other possesses. It is not absence that torments it, but the presence of the other's good. It does not covet. It does not desire for itself, but it saddens. It corrodes itself, by witnessing the joy, the success, the peace that flourish in the neighbor's garden. It is envy. The sadness before the good of another, the soul that wounds itself with the grace that does not belong to it, but which, in its blindness, believes should be denied to all. It is a gaze that closes itself, not to the darkness, but to the very light that could illuminate the path. It is the denial of goodness, the inability to bear that happiness resides in another heart. The seed of envy is planted in the arid soil of comparison. It is not the desire to possess what the other has, but the inability to bear that they possess it. It is when the brilliance of others, instead of inspiring, becomes a threat. A thorn that wounds one's own soul. The neighbor's success is not seen as an example to follow, but as a personal affront, a cruel reminder of what one believes they do not have or are not. The mind becomes entangled in a vicious cycle of observation and resentment, where every achievement of the other is a defeat for oneself. The gaze fixates, not to admire, but to scrutinize. To find faults, to diminish the value of what is seen. The light of the other, which should be a lighthouse, becomes a beam that blinds, revealing one's own insecurities and transforming them into bitterness. The soul, in its blindness, longs not to have more, but for the other, to have less. For the light that illuminates them to be extinguished, so that the shadow may extend over all, leveling existence in mediocrity. This spiritual destruction is clearly outlined by the Apostle James, who warns us. For where jealousy and selfish ambition exist, there will be disorder and every vile practice. Envy does not merely grieve over the good of others. It deforms it. It transforms light into shadow, virtue into vice, joy into a source of scorn. It is the root of hasty judgment, subtle defamation, and the venomous sarcasm that seeks to diminish others in order to elevate oneself. If only for a fleeting instant. The envious gaze does not see reality, but a distorted caricature, where every gesture of kindness is interpreted as hypocrisy. Every success as a stroke of luck, every smile as falsity. It is the evil that rejoices in evil, that feeds on the downfall of the neighbor, that finds a perverse pleasure in the misfortune of others. The soul becomes a broken mirror, reflecting only distorted fragments of the truth. Incapable of seeing the beauty and goodness that exist in the world and in people. Murmurs become the secret language of envy, weaving webs of distrust and disunity, poisoning relationships and corroding fraternity. It is the bitter ink that stains the heart, preventing it from recognizing the grace and beauty that surround it. Envy, in its most corrosive form, is silent hatred. The shadow that chases the brilliance. It is not an explosive hatred, but a slow poison that infiltrates the soul, corroding it from within. The light of others, which should be a cause for celebration, creates a shadow that threatens, that suffocates, that longs to extinguish what it cannot possess. It is the gaze that kills before the act, the malicious intention that precedes the action. Like Cain, who could not bear Abel's grace, the envious person sees the good of others as an affront to his own existence, a proof of his supposed inferiority. The murmuring, the gossip, the slander, are the weapons of this silent hatred, seeking to destroy the reputation, the joy, and the peace of the neighbor. The soul becomes a battlefield where the light of charity is constantly attacked by the darkness of resentment. It is a private hell, where the happiness of others is constant torture, and the soul itself is consumed in a fire that does not warm, but burns. Likewise, the tongue is a small part of the body, but it makes great boasts. Consider what a great forest is set on fire by a small spark. The tongue also is a fire, a world of evil among the parts of the body. It corrupts the whole body, sets the whole course of one's life on fire, and is itself set on fire by hell. The Holy Fathers, in their millennial wisdom, unveiled the pernicious nature of envy. Saint Gregory the Great, with his perspicacity, warned that envy generates hatred, whispering, slander, and joy in the evil of others. It is a vicious cycle of destruction, where the soul poisons itself and poisons everything around it. Saint Thomas Aquinas, the angelic doctor, described it as the sadness over the good of one's neighbor. A sorrow that refuses to celebrate the happiness of others, transforming it into a source of personal suffering. Envy is the poison of fraternity, the door that opens to hatred. The bitter ink that stains the heart and prevents communion. It turns the other into an enemy, a rival to be overcome or destroyed, instead of a brother to be loved and celebrated. The envious soul isolates itself in its own bitterness, building invisible walls that separate it from the grace and joy that could heal it. It is a sin that destroys not only the neighbor but, above all, itself, transforming life into a desert of resentment and solitude. The envious person lives in a private hell, an endless corridor, where every closed door hides a joy that does not belong to them, and every distant laugh is a torture. The joy of others, which should be a reason for celebration, becomes a torment. A constant reminder of one's own misery and resentment. The soul consumes itself in a fire that does not warm but burns. An insatiable desire for the good of others to cease, for the neighbor's light to be extinguished. But nothing is satisfied. Envy is a thirst that is never quenched. A hunger that is never satisfied, for it does not seek fulfillment, but the annihilation of what is good in the other. It is a cycle of pain and frustration, where the soul imprisons itself in its own bitterness, incapable of finding the peace and joy it so longs for. With every laugh, every applause, every glimpse of happiness in others, the wound of envy deepens, corroding the soul and isolating it even further. There is a light that does not come from comparison, a joy that does not depend on the loss of others. When the gaze stops watching the other, and finally turns toward the one who is the source, the heart discovers that it lacks nothing. The gift of the other ceases to be a threat, and becomes a summons. A call to grow, not to destroy. A call to give thanks, not to envy. Envy used to say, if the other has, I lose. The truth proclaims, if the other flourishes, the world flourishes. And where there is flourishing, God is present. Grace restores the gaze. And in the instant, one recognizes the good in the other as a blessing for all, the heart ceases to live in war and breathes again. Charity is our shield. The light that disarms envy and dispels the darkness of resentment. But the path of charity demands vigilance. Envy and the evil eye are ancient realities that seek to wound the flourishing soul. For this reason, we turn to the perennial protection and intercession of one of the Church's greatest spiritual warriors. Let us now unite in a prayer of protection and liberation, invoking the intercession of Saint Benedict. O glorious Saint Benedict, model of virtue and faith, intercede for me with God, so that I may be protected against all envy, the evil eye, and malice. May the Holy Cross be my light, and may the demon never be my guide. Cast away all evil from me and grant me peace, health, and prosperity. Amen. Envy may be born silent, but the cure is born when we dare to contemplate. May this episode be a mirror. If the shadow has been revealed in us, may grace be revealed even more. For the light we see in our brother is none other than the same light that God wishes to ignite in us. And when light recognizes itself in light, no shadow prevails. May the Spirit heal our sight, and restore to us the joy of recognizing in the splendor of the other, the silent passage of God. Envy divides us. Grace reunites us. If you desire this unity, subscribe to the channel, and follow along with us.